Alright, so today I would like to review my trip to Trinidad and Tobago, which is already 2 weeks ago, because right now here I'm in Guyana. I arrived yesterday from Suriname, but today I want to review my 2 weeks which I spent in Trinidad and Tobago. So I flew from Jamaica to Trinidad and Tobago because it was the cheapest flight from there, although it was $330. It's better than any other destinations other than flying back to the US, and I want to go to a new country, so this was the only place to go. But I had a wonderful time there as well, and I think Trinidad and Tobago has a very strong culture. First of all, I went to Trinidad for only one night, and then I booked the flight to Tobago. I was very lucky that I could get a really good deal on those flights for only $24, because when I was in Jamaica, I walked by this Caribbean Airlines office and asked them how much would it cost to fly from Trinidad to Tobago, and they gave me this offer, and I booked this 3 days before my departure, and I was really lucky that I could go straight after one night spending in Trinidad, where I didn't even go to Port of Spain because the airport is actually more than an hour away from the city. So I stayed in Arima, which is close to the airport, at Sheldon and Anadine. These were one of the best Airbnb houses I've ever had. They gave me also a tour to the city. So when I arrived at the airport, first they picked me up, while they charged $10. Also the Airbnb apartment costed $25. It's still the cheapest I could find in entire Trinidad. But it was totally worth it because they gave me a lot of snacks, food, and they take me around the city and show me around in Arima to see what is the local life in Trinidad and Tobago. And also went to the shopping mall, so you can see it's quite developed compared to Jamaica, because in Jamaica there are malls, but the malls are really small and usually they're not air conditioned. So we can see that Trinidad and Tobago is much more developed because they also have oil. So that's why it's the most developed country in the Caribbean. So after one night in Trinidad, I flew in the morning. I was a very early flight at 6 a.m. I flew from Trinidad to Tobago. One very important advice: there is a US dollar ATM at the airport, and only behind the customs. I was not smart enough and withdrew money when I came, because later I went to the domestic terminal and I couldn't access the US dollar ATM. And there is no other way to get these good rates for US dollar, because in the city they give you horrible rates for US dollar. And that's why I highly recommend bring US dollar in the country, and you get a better exchange rate to the TT currency than if you just withdraw the money from the bank. Like, you can save 10% on the so-called black market, which is actually the case in many countries. I think in Venezuela it's even more. What I've read, I haven't been to Venezuela yet. I will go there soon, but only for a day. Yes, so I arrived in Tobago and I found actually someone from Couchsurfing. Brandon Bruce, a wonderful guy with a big heart, and he showed me his place. He is actually not a poor guy, but he lives under very humble conditions. He's owning 3 guest houses, but he lives in a shack, basically. And he was offering me to host me in his shack, but then he said, well, we can't lock this shack, you can't leave any valuables, but I have my camera and my laptop and stuff, and I can't always carry these things around. So I asked him, well, maybe what about if I stay in one of your guest houses and you give me a better deal? So he let me stay in one of his guest houses for $16, which was a good deal, with air conditioning, probably the cheapest on the entire island in Tobago, especially for what you get. I really enjoyed this Fish Tobago guest house, and also Brandon Bruce and his assistant Dwayne were just wonderful people. I also met other travelers from Denmark and Sweden who stayed in this guest house, and I just had a great time there. We went out for trips to the jungle to see the waterfall in the jungle, and we went to this no man's land, half island peninsula with Dwayne. He took me there, and when we were at this peninsula, there were like a barbecue. So he made the barbecue by himself. So basically he got the wood, the branches from the trees, and we had fresh fish we bought before, and also some breadfruit with cheese. Oh gosh, that was so delicious, this breadfruit with cheese and the fish. Wow, he knows really well how to spice those things. So they were really delicious, and we had a wonderful time. So we were the first on this island, but later on there came like boats with tours, and they also stopped there. And they were like these local people, they're also doing barbecue, but charging a lot of money to the tourists. Because first of all, Trinidad and Tobago is a very expensive country. It is more expensive than the US. Not as expensive as Iceland, but yeah, it is quite expensive. So we had a great time there. They also had jet ski. Jet ski was relatively cheap. It was $18 for 20 minutes. And everything which is less than $1 per minute for a jet ski it's a good price. That's even better than Thailand. Unfortunately, they lowered the speed on this thing, and I didn't know that. You know, it's the second time in my life I'm riding jet ski, and then I realized, well, there's a plane coming. So this Airbnb in Guyana is just really great because you can see the planes, the small ones flying and coming to this small airport, this Ogre airport, or they call it now Eugene airport. Anyway, so jet skis in Trinidad and Tobago are not expensive, but you have to pay attention. Mine was slow, so they only put it to 50 km/h, which is not fast enough to fall off the jet ski. Even though you steer full in the curve, the force will not be strong enough to throw you off the jet ski, or especially there are no waves. So when I was riding jet ski my first time in Thailand, it was so much more fun. It is like, because you fall down in the water and it doesn't hurt, it's like really fun, but you don't have this there in Trinidad and Tobago. So make sure that it's full speed, otherwise it's not fun at all, even though it's cheap. Anyway, we cooked the fish and we cooked the breadfruit with cheese, which was super delicious. I really enjoyed the time with Drain and Brent and Bruce. And on one night we got a call from a guy that there is a turtle laying eggs on one of the beaches. This is called leatherback turtle, and it's the biggest turtle species on Earth. So we had to pay the guy $25 because he spent basically 24 hours at the beach. He really lives there, and that's how he earns money, that he gives people a call, because this turtle is only be there for 40-45 minutes. And then when we got there, this experience only lasted for less than half an hour before the turtle went back to the sea. I was also a bit disappointed because we could not use lights, because lights would disturb the turtle, so they only had a very weak red light. But it was really difficult to take photos and videos of this, and you can't even see the turtle clearly. It will still be spectacular because you see there's like some big thing in the sand, and maybe also my night vision is really bad, so I couldn't see it very clearly. And you see the eggs falling into the sand and the turtle going back into the sea afterwards. Unfortunately, I couldn't see the eggs hatching. It would be a few days later, which I missed, but I could see the Heritage Festival. Tobago had a festival in July, which is about the heritage of slavery, because you know, Trinidad and Tobago was a slavery country than most of the Caribbeans, so the British brought in the Africans to walk there for free, and they were kind of like representing this time, dressing up like they would dress up as slaves. They were dancing and they had music, and this whole event lasted maybe for 2 or 3 hours, and there were more than 50 people involved. So it was really interesting to see. I enjoyed this show very much. They also had good food. Yeah, it was one of the highlights in Tobago. The only thing in Tobago is that public transport really sucks. Like if you want to get around, there is no public transport. You must hitchhike. But when you hitchhike, you have to pay for it. So you must give the local guy some money. And in fact, it is more difficult to do this paid hitchhiking in Tobago than do free hitchhiking anywhere else in the world. Like just here in Guyana, I hitchhiked from the airport. It was the second car which stopped. But in Tobago, sometimes I had to wait 20 minutes until I get a car. Like 30-40 cars wouldn't stop, even though I'm willing to pay them. So it is a little bit complicated to get around the island. This is, I think, one of the downsides of Tobago, besides it being very expensive. In Trinidad it's a totally different story. It's really convenient to use public transport, except on Sundays. So when I want to go to the airport in Tobago, I had to get a taxi which costs $11. It's not cheap. It's almost like in Europe, the prices. So, but it's the only way, unless you hitchhike, and when you have luggage it might not be convenient because you can't go straight to the guest house. So I had to take a taxi from the airport and back, and when I want to go around the island, for example to Scarborough, I had to hitchhike basically. And in Scarborough they have this Fort George, which is also really interesting to see. It's an old fortress on the hill where you can see the city. It's free, and it's really beautiful to go there with cannons and stuff. And also they have beautiful beaches. You can ride the horse on the beach in Tobago at Buku Beach, but they also have other beaches which are called Store Bay. Actually, the immigration officer in Trinidad, I asked her what's her favorite place in Trinidad and Tobago, and she said Store Bay. But I think Pigeon Point were actually more beautiful. But Pigeon Point is a paid beach. You pay $2 or $3, but you can go in the evening after 5 p.m. to see the sunset for free. And it's a very clean beach. So after Tobago I went back to Trinidad, and I stayed again with Sheldon and Anadine, because they were just so wonderful hosts, and it paid off again because they really took good care of me. So as soon as I got back, Sheldon took me to his hometown, which is called Brooklyn, like the Brooklyn in New York, next to a town called Sangre Grande. And it was really nice. We picked up some mangoes from the trees with a stick, so they're falling down. He was using the stick and I had to catch them, and then we changed. We got more than 20 mangoes, and we shared them with the family. It was his mother, his niece, and some other people, and it was just really nice to be there with the family. He know everybody in town. He's a really great guy. I just met wonderful people in those places. So if you love mangoes, you'll have a wonderful time in Trinidad and Tobago, because they have 42 different types of mangoes. For example, starch mango, bellyful mango. In Tobago, Brandon brought us every day a lot of bellyful mangoes. These are really delicious. Then you also have ice cream mangoes. Oh, they are wonderful, especially when they come from the fridge. It's a blessing to eat them. Then starch mangoes, which is a lot of fiber. They are very common in Trinidad. And then you have long mango, Julie mango. I don't know how to call all these 40 mangoes, but there are people who know every of them, and they can even distinguish them. Yeah, so the local people, because they grew up with that. You know, in Germany there are no mangoes, no, just in a supermarket. You just call them mango. We don't even know what type it really is. But there, because the variety, and you can taste the difference. Sheldon is a lawyer, but he's a very social guy. So he introduced me to, like, he has so many friends. He knew everybody in all the towns, in his hometown, in Brooklyn, Sangre Grande, and in Arima, and also in Port of Spain. He knew just everyone, and he is such a nice guy. Everybody loves him. People were just amazing there. So because of this, I had such a great time. Trinidad and Tobago is also really known for their bird species. There are so many different species that they print them on the money. And on a $1 bill, there's actually the Scarlet Ibis you can see in the swamp. But the highlight of my trip was in fact the day of the emancipation, which is the abolishment of slavery. This day is celebrated on the 1st of August, also here in Guyana. And in Trinidad and Tobago they had a huge street parade. They had like drums, the president was there, or prime minister was there, and then they had these Moko Jumbies. Moko Jumbies are the stilts walkers, and they were so cool. We had heavy rain and they just kept walking and a bit of dancing, and everybody was just dressed up so well. The local people dressed up, the people from the parade, they had drums, they had dancers, they had basically everything. They had musicians. It was a really cool experience to see this Emancipation Day. Yeah, those kind of cultural festivals are just the highlight for me. Yeah, with good music, and it was very safe that day. Lots of police there, so we could even walk in the bad districts of the town where you see lots of poor people. Yeah, but in fact, it is not as dangerous as you might think. It is, I would say it's better than Baltimore in the US. Sheldon also took me on a day trip to Maracas Bay, which was really beautiful to see the sunset from the mountains. That was the day we wanted to see the birds at the swamp, in fact, but we were too late. We missed the tour because the tour is every day at 4 p.m. and we were there at 4:30 or 5 p.m. because he had a case in court and it took a bit longer than he expected, so we missed this one. And then we went to Maracas Bay, which was also a good experience. I'm glad we missed it because I could just go a day later. And then at Maracas Bay, it's one of the most beautiful beaches, but we arrived at night, but we could still see the beautiful sunset from the hills. It was just fascinating. And then we also went to the Lady Young lookout. They also used to be gangsters because it's really close to the Beetham or this other district where lots of poor people live. And they used to refer to it as the Lady Young lookout. It's dangerous, you know, but now it's just a lookout. You can see the city. It was beautiful. Avocados we had there. And he's just a charming guy. He could just charm the lady in giving him discounts, and I couldn't. That was also cool. Yeah, and that's about it. There's much more to see in Trinidad and Tobago. So about the food. Food is a great thing in Trinidad and Tobago because it is such a mixture of all these cultures. You have Chinese food, you have Indian food, although it's a little bit different. They have roti, but the roti there is not like in India. The roti is like a sandwich, like a wrap. So the red minibus is going from Arima to Port of Spain, and then I have this, I think, yellow one going from Port of Spain to San Fernando. And yeah, I didn't see much actually. I only saw the north part of the island because there's so much to see. I also went to the jungle, but it wasn't too spectacular. We also had mangoes and saw the village. Yeah, all in all, Trinidad and Tobago is a wonderful country. I really enjoyed my time there, but it is not a destination for backpackers. It's quite expensive, and I also spent a lot of money. Just $25 per night. It's the same I spent in Miami or New York City, you know, for an Airbnb, which is not even in a good location. You know, the location was alright, but it's not in Port of Spain. So it's quite expensive, but it's worth visiting. Also, I would love to come back there again for Carnival, because they actually say they invented Carnival before the Brazilians copied it. Well, I could spend the whole day in this hangmat. It's so comfortable. I love this Airbnb so much. I would vote this as one of the best Airbnbs I've ever stayed in, because you can see the plains. I have a wonderful house, Carinia, and I love this hangmat on the terrace so much. It's so comfortable. I could spend the whole day here. The internet is good. Everything is just great, except the water pressure is really weak. Yeah, and it's no air conditioning. It's really hot here. So anyway, back to Trinidad and Tobago. In Trinidad, one of the highlights were, in terms of nature, probably was the highlight after seeing this leatherback turtle laying eggs, Scarlet Ibis swamp. The Scarlet Ibis swamp is not far away from Port of Spain, and you can take tours for only $8, which last about 2.5 hours. So first of all, you go through this little swamp mangrove river where you can see snakes in the trees, some birds, and then you end up at this lake in the swamp where you see the flamingos, which are really cool. They are so pink, and then you see the Scarlet Ibis. Scarlet Ibis is a very unique bird. It's actually the national bird of Trinidad and Tobago. It's also on a $1 bill. In fact, you have birds on all the bills. That's why Trinidad and Tobago is so famous for their bird species. And then you see hundreds of those Scarlet Ibis birds flying around, coming at sunset next to the flamingos, and it's just perfect. If I would have a better lens, you could take amazing pictures there. But unfortunately, I just have a lens which doesn't have a good zoom. So yeah, it was just wonderful to see. And also it started to rain, and then they give us like a plastic thing you put on over the heads of all the passengers, And it was just magical moments when the birds came, it was raining, you see the mountains, the cloud, it was just all came together. I felt touched and I really enjoyed this tour. It was really, really great. And just perfect if you love birds and nature. This is one of the highlights and I highly recommend doing this tour. Alright, that pretty much sums up my trip to Trinidad and Tobago. It's a wonderful country and I highly recommend visiting there. I had a great time and I would love to come again. So thanks for watching and stay tuned. Guyana is coming up next.